les voy a contar cómo yo aprendí el español en unos meses y cómo ustedes también pueden hacerlo. So today I'm gonna share with you my personal Spanish learning journey, how long it took me to first gain basic conversational level, and what I'm doing up to now in order to maintain my Spanish level. A little reminder before we start, this video is divided in timestamps. If you for some reason want to skip a part, please check out the timestamps because it will show you what the rest of the video will be like. I first started learning Spanish almost 3 years ago. The reason why I wanted to pick up on Spanish is that my best friend comes from a Cuban household. And since I was almost always at their place, they just always talk Spanish, and of course I couldn't understand. And that's what I did. One day I took aside all my fears and all my doubts and I just started learning. And this is a little tip I want to give to you. Doesn't matter what you want to learn in life, time and money invested for your self-development is never a waste. So I remember the first day I started, I was in an airplane. I was going to Scotland, and what I did is I just wrote down basic grammar and basic vocabulary. This, for instance, was the present tense, singular and the plural articles. Besides of grammar and vocabulary, I focused on the pronunciation. How you even read, how you even pronounce the new letters that appear. In Spanish, we know there are some tricky letters you really want to study. For example, the ñ, the double R, the double L, the Y. These are little things you need to consider learning when you first start out learning Spanish, but they become automatic once you keep going. During the first days of me starting to learn Spanish, I looked up Spanish quotes, I looked up Spanish lyrics to songs. I got as much input and as much immersion in Spanish as possible. I remember looking through the quotes and not understanding anything because there was vocabulary that I still didn't get, but I didn't care too much about it. I was just sometimes reading it out loud because I knew how to pronounce the things, and that's what I want to recommend to you. Also, if you may not understand from the beginning what is being said, just try to download it and listen to it gradually. You can even reduce the speed and add subtitles for it to be a bit easier. After just a few days, I tried watching a Disney movie in Spanish, but it was way too hard. I did feel a bit discouraged, but at the same time I thought, alright, that was only a few days of me learning. Of course I will not understand everything. And this is the mindset I want you to have. Language learning is not a sprint, really, it is a marathon. Some people, it might take years, for some people just a few months. Since I actually like to use the things I learn, I started talking from day one. If I have any footage of how I first started talking, I will put it in right now.
Y me encanta mucho China porque es una nueva oportunidad y aunque una nueva cultura. Soy disfruta que tengo esa oportunidad.
It is bad, but I was improving. Talking almost every day through listening to a lot of music and watching the lyrics. I was able to understand and hold basic conversations after just 2 months.
Ya tuve muchas posibilidades de hablar español porque en un torneo, por ejemplo, fueran gente española y también en verano yo tengo que ir en España.
An app that really helped me throughout my whole language journey in Spanish is Spanish Dict. It is an English-Spanish dictionary that shows you the translation, the audio, and some example sentences, which I think is always useful to learn the vocabulary in the context. But what can I say after 3 years of my language learning journey? Learning vocabulary in example sentences is a very important key point for me. I am actually focusing more on Chinese now, but Spanish is the second focus I have for my study plan right now. I prefer TED Talks on this side. I like the informational value and the language value. the TED Talks could give me. I focus on how they express themselves, on what expressions they use, on what tenses they use in certain situations. Besides of the present, past and future tense, I've not really focused much on Spanish tenses. And this is a thing that I'm lacking, Spanish grammar. So whenever I watch videos, I try to pick the grammar up through watching to the videos. But I'm a true believer of the fact that even before you want to pick up on more difficult grammar, you should really get your conversational skills to a higher level. Because it is perfectly possible to conversate with people without using crazy grammar rules or fancy words, fancy expressions. I did a video where I just spoke Spanish. I will link it up here. Now we come to the third chapter of this video, where I share some tips, pieces of advice and things I would have done differently if I could travel back in time. There are plenty of countries that use Spanish as their native language, and of course in each country there's another accent and there are other expressions and even grammar. One advice I want to give to you is to make sure what kind of Spanish you want to learn. I stick with Latin American Spanish and more specifically with the Cuban kind of Spanish because I like how they talk and how the Spanish flows. And the reason I say this is because it will make everything so much easier. There's actually a huge difference in the Spanish from Spain and from Latin America. Really try to stick to your kind of Spanish. The second tip I did from the beginning and is really helpful is to mimic what the other person in front of you is saying. That means whenever you talk to people who speak Spanish, look how they move their mouth, how they pronounce certain words. This is really the fastest way you can pick up on anything. And a little tip besides, be open for criticism. You most probably will do mistakes, so be open for correction and even invite them to correct you. And the last tip I want to give to you is really consider emerging in the language. By that I don't mean watching a few videos. By that I also mean changing your laptop or your phone to Spanish. Writing to Spanish people often. Try to invite some Spanish friends into your friend group. Maybe get to know their family. The best thing really is to be immersed and kind of being forced to use the language. Esta fue la historia sobre mi aprendizaje de español. Les invito a también mirar a los otros vídeos que tengo porque hablan todos sobre el aprendizaje de idiomas y cómo yo aprendí estos idiomas. Si no, les deseo un buen día y nos vemos en el próximo vídeo. ¡Chao!